And what's new with it, I love the tail swish and the alpha mat's working nicely. You've got some follow through and overlapping action happening with the scarf and the whiskers on the side. Great job. A little bit of sway with the ears. I'd like to see a little bit of motion with the hair, and once the kitten resolves itself, some blinking just to have a little bit of life to the logo once it stopped moving. Those are all real easy fixes. I shouldn't even say fixes, they're just little adjustments, and then this thing's really gonna pop. Another thing I'd consider is possibly a different background than white so that the kitten doesn't get lost. Like maybe introducing a tone of one of these colors, just like knock down the saturation or the value so that it's not white and white. And there's your hair. So I think right here it'd be nice to have some drag where the hair stays this way, then swishes after the head rotates. So that would be like, oh, you did do a little life to the path. Great job. I'm just going to move this over here a little bit. And even this up and down, there could be some life there too. Like as you see the head tilt, this can sway a little bit further with it. So it's extra little, and then as it's coming back this way, it can be a little bit behind it in the motion. See what that did with the hair? It really adds more life. I'm sorry, not the ears, the eyes. That's a simple non-uniform scale for both of these. You just turn off the chain link. And I was saying, since you're going to do a blink, it'd be nice to have some anticipation. Anticipation is basically going in the opposite direction. So since these eyes are going to go down and shrink, I'm going to have them grow up a little bit so people know that the blink is coming. I'll keep them big for a couple frames, and then I'll shrink them down. And remember, you don't have to go to 0. Whatever width you want the eyelids to be. And I can keep it like that for a few frames. Then go back to 100. And remember, you can copy and paste your keyframes. So if this were a little bit longer, I'm just showing this as a hypothetical. I have the keyframe selected, and remember, I hit copy, Command C. Wherever you move the playhead is where they will be pasted into. Oops, that's because I had them both selected. So I'm doing just one eye, copy, paste where the playhead is. I did not move the playhead, so they line up. But again, just that little attention to the hair. See how much life that gives the character? And a sense of weight to it. And then the eyes, scaling them up, that's anticipation for the downward blink. And I only had to do it once because I copied and pasted the keyframes. Okay, so the rest of this is looking really sharp, coming along great. Little by little is the way to do it. Again, like I said, I just consider possibly something other than white to help the character have a little more pop and keep your eye there. But that's going to be really solid animation when you're all done. I like the little light sweep you have going across the type right there. Nice touch. And this is coming along great. So that's just it. I'd say pay attention to the hair and add a little bit of blink there, and you got something really solid. Great job. Okay, so you've got a lot of motion going on. Now with this part here, is this where the title is going to appear with your animation? Oh, and I just noticed that. That's a nice little touch. Good thing I zoomed in. And I like that motion you get as this moves off into the distance. That's pretty smart. Okay, great. I see what you said about the water and all that. So you've already seen... I see what you're doing. I get it. I've already shown you like 6 or 7 different ways of getting a watery effect. So I'm not sweating over that. I think now it's just a matter of you figuring out what you want to do, like which one you want to execute. But that's looking pretty good. Like I said, I love these. That's gorgeous. Okay, so it looks like it's a 3D layer, obviously. Okay, great. I see what you're saying about the text. Yeah, just figure out how you want that to come in. Maybe alpha mats revealing it or something like that. Don't use a lot of words, or small words will help. You know, you don't want a lot of words, small words. Keep it easy with that. Okay, all right. You got radio waves going on. I see what you got. Okay, so you could always increase the number of waves if you wanted ripples. Okay, smart. So then I assume this is masks that you drew. There's a lot of neat things you can do with radio waves that we'll get into a little later on when I go into effects and masks. This is looking sharp. So, you know, you could even just send me a drawing of where you think the text is going to resolve itself. Okay, so for Andrew, I've got a really good idea of what you're doing here. A lot of layers will help you out. If you're doing geometric shapes, I'd suggest doing them in After Effects, because then you'll be able to animate them. And the more layers you have, the more control you're going to have. And the key to this, like I showed with the kitten, is follow through and overlapping action and that amount of control. Now I'm just going to speed go through this real fast, but I'm going to use simple shapes just to give you an idea. Okay, so it's like if you had the head as a layer and each of the cheeks as a layer and a little bit of hair on the side, you can bring life into all those. And let's pretend this is an eye. Don't forget, as for scale, a fast way of getting a blink is non-uniform, and you know, move the playhead where you want. And as I said before, if you're going to do a blink, you could always do a little bit of exaggeration. Not exaggeration, anticipation. Oh, see, my anchor point is off, so I'm going to fix that. If you hold down Command or Control when you double click on the pan behind, it snaps to the center. So now I've got that little bit of anticipation. I can hold that for a couple frames, and then when you come down, you don't have to go all the way down, and that's how you get the eyelid look. And keep that for a few frames, then go back up to 100. Obviously, you want to ease your keyframes. The things that'll help give a little bit of life are like nose wiggles, the mouth moving up and down, and even if you've got a line like that for the mouth, let me show you something real quick. We'll use the pen tool here. We'll pretend this is the closed mouth, okay? The reason I use the pen tool, and you know, I've got it, I'm going to use my arrow tool. That was awful. Let me redo that. Alright, we'll pretend this is the mouth. If you draw it with the pen tool, you can then animate it over time and make it look like it's going from a resting pose into like more of a smile over time to add a little bit of life to your character as well, and even spread out a little bit. See, like that. And while we're on the subject, I'm going to show you a little cheat here. I'm going to duplicate my eye. Oops. Hit Command D to duplicate it. Clearly those eyes are too big, but let me just make the head bigger at this point. Save myself some headache. Okay, so now we've got the head and the mouth moves, and you can do some wiggle with that, but I want to show you something real neat here. We'll pretend this is an ear. Duplicate that ear. We've got the beginnings of a rough head here, and I'm going to create a null. You could always go Layer, New, well, I gotta be in my timeline, so I'm in my timeline. layer new null. And remember, a null is an invisible object that you can parent things to and use to control things like the camera. So with my null selected, I'm going to hold down Command or Control, double click in my pan behind to get it to the center. And I'm going to roughly put it at the middle of the face. So watch this. I'm selecting what's on the face, not the ears. I'm doing the eyes. This would be the nose and whatnot. If I take these and I pick whip them to my null, now we're starting to get some head turn, okay? And then what you could do is if you keep the ears to it, you see they're going to break from that. I would animate the null here for the face to make it look like it's moving around a little. Give your character some extra life, and then figure out the motion you want from the ears with position keyframes. And lastly with that, if you're going to turn the head a lot, you can use the shape of the head as an alpha mat. So I hit Command D to duplicate it. I went matte, so effect matte simple choker on my duplicate. And I'll pick a number. So I'll call this one matte, so there's no confusion, and I'm going to hide it. Now, this eye right here, set matte. If I put set matte on that eye, and I choose which layer is my matte, right here I already named it, look what happens. It's now keeping inside the shape of the head. I could then take that effect and paste it into my other eye. I'm also going to want to make sure I have effects and masks turned on for that. And see, you can hear this little bit of a gap. That's for my set matte effect. So I could choose how close it goes to that edge if I want, like if you've got a stroke going over it. So that's something to consider as well. So I look forward to see what you do with that face. There's a lot of possibilities you can get with those shapes. Like you could have the eyes rolling around on the inside and use the eye shape. I'll show you one sec. So we'll call this pupil. And it's above my eye. So if I duplicate this eye that's below it, place it above the pupil, and set my pupil layer to alpha matte. Remember, the mask goes over your face, so this shape we're using to mask the pupil. So now, as I move the pupil, see what's happening? That's how you get that advanced motion using your alpha matte, so it looks like it's moving around inside the eye and rolling back into the head. Okay, I just duplicated my eye shape, put it above the pupil, and then for the pupil layer, set that to an alpha matte. That's in my modes. Switches, modes. And then obviously I would want to make sure that everything on the face I want to move with the pupil, move with the null, is parented to the null. See? Like that. And if it's going to run the risk of breaking the side of the face, then I would add the set matte effect to it. And there you go. We've got the matte keeping it from going off the head, and the eye shape keeping it inside the eyeball. Just a little bit of fun with characters in After Effects. Now let's tackle marks. Okay, so this is your main animation. I sometimes name my main animation. Just so that I know that this is where I'm putting all my different sequences in, but this is beautiful. I love to see you nesting already, thinking it through like this. Okay, all the rough ideas are there. I'd like to see, and I see what you're doing, I'd like to see forearms and legs, but your walk cycle, if that's right, you want a little bit of squash and stretch bobbing as he's going up and down at the cross through, but it's coming along pretty nice. You want to give a little bit of extra life to the hair. But that's what lab is for, you know, like we all get to learn off each other. Why am I not seeing an anchor point on this? Oh, there it is. Okay. You turned off the mask, so that's why I couldn't see it. I mean the path thing. So that's right, it's where it should be. Perfect. I'm just messing around with this real quick. If you play around with your blending modes, you can see your overlaps for limbs. It's all about finding that one that works best for the colors that you're working with. I right-clicked on the head, and I'm going to create shapes. I don't know if I spelled that right, but this is an English class, so that doesn't matter. Okay, so the hair. Let's, oops. See what we can get going with that. It looks like there's some up and down going to the character once I zoom in. See what Wiggle Transform does here. Doesn't look like it's doing much. I'm going to duplicate the head, and on the bottom head, it's just going to be the shape of the head. And on the top head, it's going to be all the hair. Like such. See how I got a little sway to the hair now? What I did was I separated all the hair, put on a layer after I made it shapes. So the head is on one layer, the hair is on another, and we put a Turbulent Displace on it. Here's my settings, but instead of keyframing the evolution, I held down Alt or Option when I clicked on it to get the expression field. And I did time star like asterisk 6. So as time moves, that's going to keep Turbulent displacing the evolution without me having to keyframe it. Just a little way you could get a little bit of life by using that time asterisk and then a number, so it keeps moving while, you know, the time passes in your thing. You could always change the size or the amount, or try different type of Turbulent Displace. Let's see what Bulge does. See, it's just going to be a completely different animation when you just play around with those different settings. Let's take a look in real time. See, that's a little too wavy, but I could always decrease this if I like. Let's try cross displacement. See how it looks like his hair is flowing now? All different changes based upon what you choose in your drop down. So, like I said, add in those extra limbs and watch the order of them as you're animating. I'm unsure about how this is coming in. Maybe if it just dropped down and then open, like swung open on the impact, like came down, snap, and then split open and had a little bit of springing up and down, like a squash and stretch. That might, okay, but like I was saying, that might be a way of attacking that to bring that in, but it's coming along pretty nicely. And I just want to see a tighter look to it and those extra limbs. But you've got the idea of the walk cycle going. It's just going to be a matter of adding in those upper and lower limbs and the order they just swing with and back and forth to give that extra life. I see a lot of things moving around, but most of it's happening off of the screen. Is there a missing camera or something? And I think this should stay with it rather than that break that's happening. You got this parented, great job. Because watch what happens. See, now it's interacting with its environment. So that's great parenting you got going on. I don't see anything 3D enabled. Like I said, I'd keep that shape together. And I think you're saying you're going to have the fingers twirling the lens around. That'd look pretty good if you did something like that. And Do you know when and where the company name is going to be coming in? If you do figure out what happened to it, just take a breath, see if you've got an older version of it or whatever, and you do find a working version, just resend it and I'll take a look at it. There's a way to get the ears to move easily in Duik and hide based upon where they are with the head, but I can't figure out a workaround in After Effects. I'm just going to experiment while I'm waiting on some questions. Sound would be a great addition, Alexis. I always encourage sound and royalty-free music. It's best to get the royalty-free music on YouTube. I'll show you that in a second. So if you go studio.youtube.com, there's usually an audio library. And this is the important part, this little menu, attribution not required. And then you'll find the songs where you don't need to credit the artist in your description. I don't know if this includes voice clips. Oh, you could do voice in your thing if you want, but focus mostly on the motion, but sound and music definitely help push it. No, I can show you how to put in sound right now. Okay, let's pretend this is our logo and the final composition. You want to put some sound in there. File, import file. And this is all royalty-free music I got off YouTube. So you would select your audio clip and hit import. Then drag it into your timeline. And the levels, that's how you would change the sound, like louder or quieter. And you see I twirl down audio, waveform, and this is where you see the waveform. So if you've got a specific sound effect you want to line up, open up your waveform so you can see where it is and line up your sound faster. Then to preview it, you hit the space bar. And then you'll be able to hear the audio along with your animation. So, just import your audio, bring it in here, twirl down to make it louder or quieter, adjust the levels. You can even keyframe that if you want to fade it on or off. Then twirl down the waveform to see where your waves, the audio waves start, so you can line up your sound effects or your music precisely and quickly. I hope that helps answer your question, Alexis. Not a problem. It's what lab time's all about. Just learning things ahead of the learning curve. It's all about experimenting and having fun. And while we're just trying new things, this is a grayscale image I just created with some turbulent noise and the lens effect. Now, if you've got grayscale and you want to keep the tones, like the lights, the darks, one way to colorize it is with a tint. And I could say, well, let's make my white light blue. And you see I kept all my tones. Tint is one way to do it. Tritone is another. That will give you control over all those, and you could also adjust how much the blend is. And then there's everyone's favorite colorama. So I went to output, and you can see there's plenty of different presets. Just remember, the more complex your animations get, the more they'll eat at your computer processor and make your render time last longer. And I hope you're all having fun learning how to animate, because if you just approach it with the right frame of mind, and you're playful and you don't mind making mistakes, and you just keep trying to troubleshoot them, you can have a lot of fun with motion. Oh, okay, yeah, image on just the canvas, that's super easy. So if you want to put something on just the canvas, you can use that shape as an alpha matte. So I'll just grab this photo, put it underneath. The canvas, we're going to need to duplicate, because the top one will be the alpha matte, and the one beneath will be any extra canvas you have if the image doesn't take up the whole thing. So the one on top is your mask, the layer below. Go to your modes, track matte, make it an alpha matte, and then you can scale it and position it as you need. That help answer your question? No problem at all. And like I said, if it doesn't cover the whole canvas, that's where the duplicate comes in handy, below that image, and you'll still have this shape masking anything out. So homework 2, it's either a TV show intro, credits, or the title. If you had time, you could also do a motion graphic, but this one hasn't been too successful because people get, a little lazy with that one. But, a nice professional looking TV show title or credit sequence. And I'll show you something real quick. Here it is. I'll play it at normal speed, then we'll slow it down. Okay, here it comes again. This is something you could do in After Effects, but I just want to show you the subtlety, the animation hierarchy, the thought that goes into it, like 15-second title sequence or a credit sequence. You've all seen credit sequences at the beginning and ends of movies, so... Also, while we're on the topic, as always, if you go to Canvas Files, Spring 2021, I think it's Reference Files, yep. There's a Homework 2 reference, and here's a bunch of text and PDFs, so you got plenty of stuff already looked up in advance. Alright, here we go. This is Sherlock Holmes. Now, this is done with alpha mattes and particles. Just bringing in different layers at different times. It's just an example of having a clean, well thought out concept. So this is an example of a credit sequence. Like I said, there's lots of reference I already looked up for everybody. Ooh, good, low res. But see, this is something you could do in After Effects. This is all parallax with some texture. And this would be a shape layer, or, yeah, it'd be a shape layer. And you'd use it as an alpha matte for your texture, and this could be on top of it for that extra little bit of detail in the alpha matte, and then they added drop shadows in between the layers, and they're just moving up and down. See, you could do all this in After Effects. Just subtle little motions, watching your animation hierarchy, things going above and below in your layer stack. That's all rotation and some layers. They just treated it with texture and some pretty slick art design, but you've already got the tools to do something like this now at this point. Position, scale, rotation, transparency, using alpha mats, adding textures, parallax right there. It's just breaking it down, demystifying it. Great use of contrast and depth in this. The more layers you get, the more interest you get. Those could all just be individual layers that you animate just with good parenting to the layer structure. And this is an example of the fly through I showed you last week with an alpha invert mat. Like I said, you've got all the knowledge and tools to create something like this one day when you get the time. And I love the follow through and overlapping action here. Just little attentions to detail. See the background, that's rotating as they rotate. It's just little itty bitty things, and you add them up one after the other, and then you got something complex and interesting. That's just a quick breakdown of Hollywood's credit sequence that, like I said, now you've got the know-how, and you just need the time to execute something. That's why there's only 2 assignments. Think through your thing, and I'll help you come up with the right techniques that'll help you get it done on time. Canvas, files, the spring 2021, reference, and there's the stuff for homework too. Lots of different samples, and here's student samples of what they did, and then some professional stuff right there. Okay, I want to show you something. Moving back to the Bob Ross. I did a CC light sweep, and you'll notice you can change the angle of it. I had it set to 90. And what I did was give it a little bit of subtlety, but watch the difference when I turn this effect off and on. See how much depth we added to that just with a little bit of shadow? Just that little bit helps give some interest to the character. So rather than using it as light, I made it dark and then set the reception to composite instead of using that as a glow, so it's creating shadow instead of light. It looks like it stays with the character. I'm going to copy this, turn it off, go into the character, and apply it to each layer. Now look what that did to our character. Completely different look and feel, and it makes a little bit more sense motion-wise. So, same thing, done two different ways. I put the effect on each layer inside the pre-comp, and then the other one, I just put it on the pre-comp. You get two different looks. It's all about playing around and seeing what works best for you. It's funny how the beginning of this displacement map almost made it look like some of the leaves were animating, but it's also getting the trees as well. Or if you have a link that you want me to take a look at and help you break down something you saw that inspired you, I can do that as well. But you noticed with the Lemony Snicket's title sequence, there was a lot of stuff going on the screen, but not everything in it was fully rigged. You don't have to fully rig everything. Just plan out your motion and only move what you want to move, rather than, wasting all that time rigging everything if you're not even going to be moving. So be very strategic and think it through, and that'll save you a lot of time in the long run. That's one of the benefits of storyboarding. Just remember, when you're doing your character, rounded joins will help you hide edges. I'm going to try and work with a fast walk cycle with all the limbs, like upper and lower. So these will be the arms in the front. These will be the arms behind the torso. And those will be the legs behind. I'll parent the lower arm to the upper arm. And the lower leg to the upper leg. And remember, we're going to start 1 second apart and move our keyframes as we need to, just because it's easier math. The first pose will be the exact same as the third pose, and the middle pose is the opposite. So these are the front arms. I'll do 26, so this is going to be 26 in the opposite direction. I had something selected while I drew the head. Did not want that to happen. And I'll put the anchor point for the head down where it's going to meet the body. And for the arms and the legs, all my anchor points are at the tops. So front arm forward, the corresponding leg would be behind. That's why color coding helps me figure this out. just copying my first frame and putting it at the last frame. I'm going to put my anchor point for the torso at the bottom middle. And I'm going to add some very subtle squash and stretch, not too much, not even squash and stretch. I'm going to parent my upper arms to the torso. Normally they'd be hips, but I'm just doing this quick. My upper limbs would go to the hips, but I didn't draw hips. Okay, now let's work on our in-betweens. And already you can see by independently rotating the lower arm, you're getting a bit more life to the character, and we'll do the same thing to the back arm. Obviously I'd line these up a little bit better, but you're seeing how you're going to want that drag of the arm moving after the upper arm rotates. The lower arm is going to move a little bit more after that, and the hand would move a little bit after that. See how much more life you're getting to the front leg as opposed to the back leg, because we haven't rotated that one yet. And obviously you'll line up everything more carefully than I did. But you get the idea of front arm in the front, and then the front leg will be behind it. They've got to move separately. You're going to want extra motion with the lower arm after the upper arm is done swinging. Same as with your legs, but that's just a little recap on follow through and overlapping action with your walk cycle. Just remember those little things like on the down, there's a little bit of a squash down, and then you'll be well on your way. Okay, so since no one else has anything to look at, I'm going to be ending the lab at the moment. Write me if you've got any ideas you want me to look at, or you fix some of the projects you wanted me to look at tonight, and I'll take a look at those and get back to you. I'll screen record and give you some constructive criticism to help you push your animations along and see if you get a good grade for the first assignment. So I hope you all have a great weekend. Be safe with the upcoming snow, and write me if you've got any questions or you want me to look at some changes you made to your animation. Have a great weekend.